One. Good morning. Welcome to the November ITSEC Tech Grove Connect webinar. This will be our last Tech Grove Connect webinar for the year. So very appropriately, we are focusing this one, as you've seen, on how to get the most out of ITSEC, because that is right around the corner. I'm Carolyn Logue. I'm director and co-founder of the Central Florida Tech Grove. Before we launch into our lively discussion this morning with my guest here, I want to tell you just a little bit about Tech Grove. Some of you, this may be your first exposure to who we are and why we're doing this. The Central Florida Tech Grove, we are located physically in Orlando, Florida, in the Central Florida Research Park, which is the home and the epicenter of DoD services and commands executing and acquiring training and simulation products and services for human performance for our military. We opened our doors almost 3 years ago, not quite, as a DoD Innovation Center created through a partnership agreement executed by the Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division here in Orlando, but very uniquely among DoD Innovation Centers. You see all those logos along the bottom of that slide, and that is because we are funded not only by the Navy, but 3 entities from the Army, 1 Air Force Command, 1 Marine Corps Command, the Defense Health Agency, and the Advanced Distributed Learning Initiative out of the Office of Secretary of Defense, as well as Office of Naval Research through the Naval X Central Florida Tech Bridge. So we very uniquely have multiple customers that we serve to do a number of things for them. And I'll share those with you here on another slide, just to follow. This is where we focus. Many of you, these acronyms will be familiar. These areas of technology innovation will be familiar, but everything we do focuses on human performance. Cybersecurity obviously underpins almost everything in DoD these days. And along the bottom there, you see some of the core areas of expertise, innovation, technology, industry that it takes to execute on human performance and readiness for our military. So hopefully all of you see yourself somewhere in one of those verticals or one of those categories. We have 3 core missions that drive everything we do for our customers and for those of you that are industry, academia, trade organizations, any of you outside the government that want to collaborate with our national security agencies to help address human performance. We reach out across the country to bring innovators in industry and academia into this space and the defense industry, to bring creative solutions and services to bear on needs and problems. We do a number of things to help support the transfer of intellectual property and technology and knowledge, as well as the transition of capabilities that have been developed under DoD funding. It might be an SBIR technology, it might be an innovation developed some other way that can benefit from visibility and finding partners and collaborators both in the government and out to move that capability into application. And finding solutions for problems. For our customers, that really is one of the core elements of what we do. We have a number of initiatives ongoing at any time that are focused specifically on finding solutions for needs that they have, and there are opportunities for you to collaborate with us and engage in solving those problems. Here's a slide with a couple of upcoming events, and one of which is exactly one of those problem-solving initiatives. Our current prize challenge, which is on the streets, a Ready Relevant Learning initiative, which is to apply or find prototypes of an AI-enabled application on the front end of some instructional systems design elements of Ready Relevant Learning. Applications to participate in that challenge have closed. However, on December 13th, we will be hosting the virtual presentation and demos of those participants that are down selected to present. And there will be 10 to 12 of those from the 65 teams that have submitted. So we're very excited about that. Can't wait to see who comes out on top winning the prize money. Next week, Tuesday, if you're interested in learning about SBIR, STTRs directly from those in the Navy, and specifically NAVAIR, that manage those programs, not only first and second phase SBIRs, but the commercialization support as well. Encourage you to log in and join us for that. Or if you're local, come on and come in person. And you can find information about all of these on our website. That's my contact information. If you don't do anything else as a result of these slides, please go onto our website and fill out the contact us form so we can make sure you're on our distribution list and get information about not only the events that I just mentioned, but all the other opportunities that we give you to engage with us and with the extraordinary community of national security organizations here in Central Florida. With that, let's get on to the topic of the day. I have two of my best friends here with me today, and I'm so excited. I hang out with both of these folks a lot for a lot of reasons, but I've asked each of them, they're going to introduce themselves and tell you who they are, where they sit, and why you should listen to them. What gives them credibility to talk about this topic, right? They'll each introduce themselves and share some of their top tips. Then we're going to go into a conversation, a dialogue. We're going to address some of the questions that many of you submitted beforehand when you registered. I'll also be watching the Q&A. If you have a question that comes to mind during this webinar, be sure you put it in that Q&A, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Ms. Leslie Faircloth. Woo! All right.
Thank you, Carol.
Go for it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Leslie Faircloth. I'm the Deputy for Small Business Programs at the Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division, or NAWCTSD, NOCTSD. Yes. You will hear us repeat that acronym plenty. So I've been the Deputy for Small Business here for the last 8 years. Went by really fast.
I know.
And I've been in the modeling and simulation and acquisition industry for the past 26 years. So I've been to my fair share of ITSECs, that is for sure. And it can be a really, really engaging and interesting time, but it can also be really a bit overwhelming, particularly if you are not prepared. My top tips are all about being prepared. First thing, you want to make sure that you're really familiar with the agenda, which is on the website. Download the app if you have not. I've already got it downloaded on my phone.
But the agenda's not in the app yet.
The agenda's not in the app yet. That's to come. So these are really important tools. But I'll talk specifically about engaging with some of the government customers, the government booths. There are going to be plenty of them. Know your target, right? So if you're interested in doing business with NOCTSD, for example, my first tip is do your homework. Know what NOCTSD's mission is, understand what we buy, visit our website, right? That's the first step, to kind of do a little bit of recon, to understand a little bit about our mission, our vision. There's also a really important link there on our website for our acquisition forecast. So if you go to the website, which is navair.navy.mil/NOCTSD, you'll see a little menu there. On the upper right, you're going to want to click that menu and look at industry outreach. So when you get to the industry outreach page, you're going to want to select the TSIS, Training and Simulation Industry Symposium. And there are slides posted there on our website. And the TSIS slides are the basis for our acquisition forecast. It's a very lengthy slide deck. There's a lot of opportunities there. You're going to want to become real familiar with those kinds of opportunities. There's a real brief description and acquisition milestone schedules to kind of help you understand what it is we're looking for and when that opportunity is going to be coming out. So that's just a for example on the NOC-TSD website. If you're interested in doing business with other services such as the Army and the Air Force, similar recommendation. You're going to want to go to their website, start there, and specifically look for some acquisition forecasting.
Will that usually be found under the industry outreach section of the website, small business section typically? Do you know?
For anything related to NavAir, which for those of you who aren't familiar, NOC-TSD is a sub-command within NavAir. NavAir is our headquarters. NavAir sites, they typically do have a menu that includes industry outreach and a link to our acquisition forecast. But other services, they do a little differently, right? So it may not be abundantly obvious, but for example, if you go to Army Contracting Command Orlando, if you Google that, you'll find their webpage, and they definitely have some information on where to find their acquisition forecast. So it's going to depend on the military activity. They do differ. Yeah. Other than that, just keeping in mind that when you engage with folks at the booth, you're probably going to get lots of interesting things. You may only get, a limited amount of time. Take a lot of notes because you're going to want to do some follow-ups. I'm sure Dan's going to talk a little bit about that, so I won't talk too much about that. I think I can probably stop there. We'll hand it over to Dan. There's so much to talk about. I don't want to say it all.
We got lots of great questions to follow up with.
Yes.
All right. So my friend, Mr. Ketchen, who's here, actually double-hatted today.
Double-hatted
I
today,
guess.
correct.
All
yes,
right.
I can address both.
All right. Go for it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Ketchen. I'm the founder and principal at Technology Associates and Products. We are a sales and BD consulting company based right here in Orlando, based in this facility in the UCF Business Incubator. I started the company 8 years ago, and basically the goal was to be the sales and business development gap filler for those companies which did not have the financial capability to have a full-time experienced person on their team doing those things for them. And really my passion for most of the last 5 years of the 8 years I've been in business is helping small businesses grow, particularly small businesses outside of the Orlando ecosystem that want to participate in it, because there are incredible opportunities to do so. And I really try to help them do that. My first experience with ITSEC was actually the job interview that I got for my first position in this industry. They flew me down for ITSEC, interviewed me in their booth, and they had a little subset of their booth set up for private meeting space. I interviewed with like 8 different people, and then they said, okay, go around, walk around, and get excited about this industry. And I certainly did. 10 years later, I'm still here. The other hat that I'm wearing today is I'm on the board of the National Center for Simulation, which is a consortium of academia, industry, and government people and organizations with a mission of propagating modeling and simulation beyond defense, but also within defense, and preparing the next generation workforce to participate in our industry as well. For example, here in Orlando, the average salary for someone in our industry is $90,000 a year, which is a very nice position to find yourself in this industry. Top tips. To Leslie's point, it's all about preparation. For every hour that you intend to spend on the exhibit floor, you should be spending 1 to 3 hours in preparation for that. There's so much information that you can gather beforehand. Just this morning, I went into the website. I found there's about 470 individual organizations that are exhibiting. He said there's a lot of government. There's 26 government booths. There's 8 educational institution booths. There's 10 association booths. And then the rest, roughly 420-ish, are all industry. If you download the app, which Leslie helpfully suggested, you can sort by category and see who you want to target. But it's more than just knowing who's going to be on the floor. It's reaching out to them in advance. It's drilling down, finding a contact, talking to a person, saying, I'm interested in your technology, or I have some information or technology that I think would be beneficial to you. I would like to schedule time in your booth. Schedule time. That is the number one tip I have, is schedule time. Whether you're an exhibitor or you're a participant, schedule that time in the booth so that if you're a participant, they have the right person in the booth to talk to you, and you're not just walking up hoping to get someone's attention. Because there could be a lot going on in some of these booths, especially for the large primes, which you're probably looking to get with if you're a small business. They're really busy. And just because somebody's available, these companies have multiple divisions, business units, programs. They might not know anything about what you want to talk about. So if you get with them in advance, then they can have the right person in the booth. Similarly, now is the time to be reaching out to those government people that Leslie mentioned. They have calendars. They will put you on their calendar and come to your booth, but you have to make that first step to reach out. Typically, it's contacting one of the administrators for the agency, and they will get you to the person who will get you on their schedule. And I guarantee you, they will show up on time. If you have a 2 o'clock meeting at 1:59, someone in uniform or a suit is going to step up and say, I'm here, show me what you got.
So will they do that just because you ask? What do you need to tell them that will pique their interest and encourage, really, motivate them to want to come visit you? Because they get a lot of these requests.
Absolutely. And you have to know what you want to show them or talk about. So if you just call into the main number at PEO Strive, for example, they're going to ask you, okay, well, what programs are you interested in? That's where you need to have gone onto their website and reviewed all of their programs and all of their contracts and find out, I want to talk to somebody in the synthetic training environment. I'm interested in that. I have some things I'd like to talk to about that. Okay. And then you drill down through the organization and they will pass you off. They'll give you contact numbers. You can reach out. The other person, and I'm going to give a shout out to, especially if you want to get into the Army side, is Leslie's counterpart over at ACC Orlando, Mr. Damian Bailey. If you haven't had your time with Damian, you need to schedule that right away. He will give you an unbelievable briefing on how Army works here in Orlando. And anytime you want to get that point of contact, call him up. He always answers his phone or calls you right back. And he will say, you need to talk to Colonel so-and-so, or you need to talk to the deputy program manager. Here's his or her number. Here's his or her email. And make those requests.
Absolutely. If you can tell, if you do the homework and identify programs that you're interested in and that your technology has relevance to, if you can communicate what problem are you able to solve, that's likely to pique some interest and more likely to get you an appointment.
So I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that some of you submitted, because you took the time to give them to us. So we want to be sure we answer them. And you've heard some great tips about some number one or top pieces of advice for those that are attending and not exhibiting. I love this question. How best to efficiently see everything? And my response is you can't. So let's talk. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, I think, and how you could just get a very shallow exposure to a lot of things, not everything. But here it seems like it's important that you know what you want to achieve at ITSEC, and what your business strategy is and what aligns with that. For example, maybe you are currently doing business with the Army and you want to expand that business in the Army. Focus on Army. All right? Don't worry about the Navy. Don't worry about the Marine Corps. Don't worry. You'll run across them. You'll get exposed to them. But deep dive, do all this preparation on every part of the Army that's there, including perhaps the foreign military delegations that will be there. There are a lot of international defense government folks there, officers, companies. So focus on the service that you're in and want to increase your business in, or focus on the one that you want to transition into and maybe don't have business with yet. Right? I was talking to the company the other day that they're deeply embedded with Coast Guard, but they don't do anything with Navy. Well, it's logical they would focus on Navy and maybe even Marine Corps to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that as kind of your core strategy, both from company perspective. Those exhibitors in that exhibitor directory, both online and in the app, you can read about some of those key organizations and who are they doing business with. If it's a company deeply embedded with the Navy, go meet with them about partnering with them if that's a service you want to get into or a service you want to increase your business activity in. So in terms of seeing everything, it's just probably not humanly possible,
not possible.
Unless you can clone yourself, which we'd all love to know about. But don't forget about the other things that go on too, besides just the exhibits.
Right.
There are sessions that are open to attend if you're registered to go to there. Don't forget to hang out in the lobbies and the bars. I'm just going to put that out there, right? So, go get a Coke and a cup of coffee or whatever, or a beer or a glass of wine. And it is amazing who you will meet at the bars and all those hotels around there. Have lunch at the lunch spots around the exhibit hall because there'll be a bunch of people hanging out there.
Oh, yeah.
And talk to everybody you're standing next to and sitting next to. I know that's probably going to be really hard for some of you, right? But it's so easy. You just say, "Hi, I'm Carol Ann. What brings you here?" Because people love to talk about what? Themselves. So just ask them. You probably won't have to say a whole lot more, but you'll get a lot more information. But what else would y'all say, just from a general perspective, on how to really hone your focus about your strategy?
Sure. So my experience is primarily on the exhibit hall floor, right? That's what I do. And for this ITSEC, I've got 3 clients with booths, and I'm ushering 2 more around at various times. As much as I preach about getting those schedules in advance, there's also value in just walking around and meeting people and wandering in the booths, especially the smaller company booths that may not have a lot of people in them. But you've got to even prepare for that. Number one, you've got to have your pitch. And your pitch cannot be so general as, we do AR, VR, XR, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Now, I need to know like who you've done it for, sample projects, that sort of thing. So that when I ask, well, tell me more about that.
That's the real
You've
distinct value.
Exactly.
Right?
What do you do that's different from everybody else? Or who do you have on your team that nobody else has? And then you've also got to have your ask. What are you trying to get? You are not going to walk out. I'm sorry to tell you this, everybody. You're not going to walk out of ITSEC with a contract.
That was one of the other questions. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's happened. I've never heard of it happening. What you're trying to get is the next meeting.
Second date.
Right?
Yes, the second date. You're trying to get that next step. It's a relationship building tool. It really is. And so government contracts really is about forming relationships, because there has to be that trust and that mutual understanding and bringing something to the table that your customer can use. So like Dan said, try not to be too general. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm approached by a company that says, I do IT services. Well, that's a pretty broad area, maybe be a little bit more specific about what type of services in particular, what's your specialty, who are your customers. If you have commercial customers only, great, let me know that. If you're eyeing some DoD customers, why them in particular? Let's have that conversation. Yeah.
As you mentioned, your experience is largely from the exhibit hall, and many of you may just be exhibiting or planning to visit the exhibit halls. However, let's talk a little bit about if you're a full conference registrar and you have the opportunity to select paper sessions to go to and tutorials to go to. My biggest frustration at ITSEC every year is that I don't have time to get to a lot of those papers and tutorials because of all this stuff I have to do on the exhibit floor, but they are so rich. The information, the insight, the authors of those papers can be key points of contact for you to follow up with.
Very good.
Because many times there are government co-authors on those papers along with industry. But even if you don't get to talk to them at ITSEC, the papers will all be available on the ITSEC website at some point, or where you can see the email addresses of all the authors.
Mm-hmm.
So it is such a rich repository. Attend the ones you can, pick those areas of key interest for you, because they're in tracks, all the papers, for those of you that maybe haven't seen the agenda in the past, the subject matter tracks, services tracks. So pick those areas you really want to deep dive into and attend as much of those as you can, to meet people, to hear the information they share. You'll hear about problems they're solving. You'll hear about solutions that they're trying. It'll give you great insight into where your capabilities and product and services can plug in. And the tutorials, there's a lot more tutorials these days than there used to be, because they're doing a lot of shorter ones. So lots of opportunities to take a little bit deeper dive into some subject areas too. So I think, a lot of folks do just go to the exhibits and maybe don't consider paying more to be able to attend all those papers and tutorials, but it's a very, very worthwhile investment if you do your planning. I think that's the mantra of the day.
Yeah.
If I can just build on that.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a full conference registration, there are a number of areas on the show floor. Last year there was a cyber area, for example, cyber pavilion, where they have speakers. And again, that's your opportunity to meet like-minded people who are also interested in that domain, and start exchanging some cards. Who are you? Everybody has their company name on their badge. So what do you do? Right. And that's where you got to have your pitch ready and your ass ready.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So become very, very familiar with the agenda. That's what I'm currently doing. Yeah. Deep dive into the details of the agenda to kind of figure out, okay, what are these best papers? What are the tutorials? What are the special events? And I think there are 4 different kinds of special events that, start a little more broadly and then get more narrow in terms of scope of interest. So there's a lot to digest there.
Oh, can I go back to the making the most of your time on the floor?
Of course, yeah.
I really want to encourage everybody to go and visit those association booths, because those associations, not just National Center for Simulation, who does have a booth, all of them are a force multiplier for you as a sales or BD person, because they have all of their members. And when you find out what these groups do, Women in Defense, I know, has a booth, for example, and find out what are your activities, what are your events, how much does it cost to join. Most of them are very inexpensive to join, and the ROI is really high. So go and visit those associations, even if it's just to grab a pamphlet and a business card and follow up with them later. But they are absolutely a force multiplier for you.
Here's a trivia question for you two. What does it cost to join the Tech Grove Innovation Growers Alliance?
I'm going to guess 0.
You would be right. Woo-hoo! 0. So Tech Grove, booth 3665 on the show floor. Definitely come visit us. And just for all of you, if you're there at ITSEC and you want a little bit of help having follow-up conversation like this, and have some questions about somebody on the floor, we're not going to know all the answers to anything, but we know a lot of the folks that are there on the floor. And come by, stop by the booth and let us give you a little bit of help, or just come hang out with us and be sure you're on our distribution list. There's a question here I really loved that someone submitted, and I hope that this person's on the call today. So I'm newly transitioned from active duty and new to the simulation industry. Yay, welcome. What are 3 tips for me to make the most of my ITSEC experience without having a lot of technical background experience?
Why are you looking at me? Because I have no technical background experience?
Nor do I.
Nor do I. I think each one of us could give a good tip there, right? My top tip would go just really explore. I don't know if you're also going to some of the papers. I would suggest that if you are going to the full conference, go to some of those tutorials, because there's some great just fundamental stuff in some of those tutorials. But then on the exhibit floor, my suggestion would be experience as much as you can. Put those headsets on, sit in those simulation platforms, that really get that hands-on experience that is so prevalent on the floor at ITSEC. So that's my tip. You each get one too.
Okay, so my tip will be, I'm assuming that this individual is interested in finding a new career opportunity, which is why they asked the question. In addition to what you're saying about exploring as much as you can, there are a number of professional staffing companies that have booths at ITSEC.
Yeah.
Use the app, find out who they are, and go visit them. I know some of them. I'm not going to mention any names on this podcast because I'm not associated with any of them necessarily.
That's so true, yeah.
But they are on the floor. And the other thing you can do is, as you're visiting some of these booths and you're telling people what you're interested in, ask who else you should be talking to. Because the person at a medical simulation, maybe that's not your thing, but they may say, oh, I know just the person. Go to booth, whatever, and talk to them. I bet they would be interested, because I know they were just telling me that they were looking for a transitioning Air Force officer who has expertise in avionics. So I know that person's going to want to talk to you. Yeah. So network like crazy, but go visit the staffing companies as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, I echo what Dan said. It's there's so many opportunities to network. I mean, it's every which way you turn. So, whatever the background is, usually companies are looking for military SMEs, subject matter experts. Sorry, I don't mean to talk in acronyms. But certainly, talk about your experience, and those folks you meet may be able to direct you to, hey, so-and-so's looking for that kind of background. The networking is so important.
Yeah, and don't be shy about saying what you did in your service time. If you were an aircraft maintainer, there's 50 companies on the floor that want your resume.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to point out that when you're doing your homework about who's on the exhibit floor, that when you go to the exhibitor list on the ITSEC website, be sure you go to the advanced search function, because that's where there's this long list of categories that every exhibitor tags themselves. So it makes it easy for you to search through the exhibitors to find those that are working in areas of specific interest to you. So I'm going to put that link in the chat for you. It'll should take you directly to the, I hope, the advanced search page.
Well, copy it and save it for later.
Yeah. Don't go there now. We're still talking. We're still helping you out. Yeah. And don't forget that the Q&A portal is open. Maybe we're so good. Nobody has additional questions.
Well, they asked so many good questions in advance.
I know. Let's see. There was, Leslie, I know you and I had both targeted some questions.
Yeah, there's one that I highlighted. What's the best method to invite key government stakeholders to a booth and/or meeting room? Well, first of all, I know you asked about method, so I'll talk about method. It's going to depend. I would recommend emailing and follow up with a call. A lot of the government reps, myself included, email can get pretty flooded this time of year, so it's easy to miss. Be persistent. If you haven't heard from me, give me a call, because things do get overlooked because of sheer volume. So do it as much in advance as possible. Right now, I am taking appointments. I'm building my list of folks that want to come see me, or want me to come see them in their booth. So I am building my schedule out right now.
Okay, I think we're going to get flooded in the chat with requests for Leslie.
What is your number? I agree, though. Send the email first.
Yes.
Give the person 24 hours to respond, and then follow up with a phone call, because many people are just super busy this time of year. So give them the courtesy of having the time to address your email when his or her schedule allows. But if you don't hear from him in a day, give them a call and show them that you're serious and that you really want to have a conversation.
How well does it work to reach out to particularly government folks via social media like LinkedIn? I mean, a lot of government folks are not on social media, but True. Leslie's very
very
active on LinkedIn.
I would say in general, reaching out on LinkedIn to contact government points of contact you're going to have probably more misses than hits, unless it happens to be somebody who's very active on the platform, like myself, or maybe an industry outreach type person. Usually those requests to like program managers and contracting officers, they're not on there. They're not active. So getting contact to reach them at their office number or email is
best.
That's
As
best.
somebody who spends a lot of time trying to get government people's attention, LinkedIn is not the way. Social media is not the way to go.
No, true.
Just wanted to put that out there.
Respect the process.
Yeah.
Contact the administrative assistant if it's somebody who's high up. If it's a program manager, get their contact. The TISA slides that you mentioned, every program manager who's listed on there, their phone number is on those TISA slides.
And I put that link in the chat, the link to all of the TISA's presentations from 2023. So every DoD entity that's part of Team Orlando presented at TISA. So you have access to those presentations. I did bring up social media because there was a question that we got as to what's the best way to keep up with things going on every day at ITSEC, and it is social media. I put the link in the chat to the ITSEC page that has all the social media accounts, and it is very active now, during, and even a little bit after ITSEC. So that's a great way to find out about side events, special events going on, things going on in the convention center, on the exhibit floor, or
there's also a printed show daily every day, which has like the official activities, but following the social media will show you some of the unofficial fun evening activities. For those outside Orlando, they may not know that the location of this event every year is on International Drive, which is one of the premier tourist destinations probably in the country, and has just miles of really great places to have a meal, get some entertainment, have a meeting, have informal meetings, go out and socialize. And two of the favorite haunts during ITSEC are Howl at the Moon and the Ice Bar.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because they're so different.
Because it's something different and fun, and you're away from the floor, and you can relax and have a good time and get to know people a little bit.
And I did see a question in the list about, what's the best place to get meeting space? If you don't have a booth and you don't have any place, to meet, what I've seen some small businesses do is sometimes they'll rent a conference room in a nearby hotel, or maybe they'll have a bigger suite where they'll
I get a lot of invitations to suites.
Exactly. Otherwise, it can be really difficult to find private space to talk. So that can sometimes be challenging, but honestly, sometimes it's as easy as, hey, do you have a moment to grab coffee? And just have a few minutes to chat.
Yeah, and the upstairs level where you come in and register and everything before you go down into the show floor, those are really large spaces. There's plenty of room to have little little areas, stand up and talk.
Go across the breezeway to the hotel. There's lots of seating around.
And there's also a large food vendor area on the show floor as well that seats probably 50 people, I would imagine, generally. So you can grab a little spot there too.
Yeah.
And you can sit down.
Which you will want to do after all the walking.
Yes. Yes. Tip number 1: wear comfortable shoes. Comfortable shoes are required.
Bring a jacket.
Yeah.
I highly recommend, ladies, things with pockets, so you don't have to carry. Like, I try very hard not to carry person stuff around if I don't have to.
It's heavy.
I stuff my pockets. It's a little easier. Anyway, one of the things we haven't touched on that I do often find myself talking to folks about, and that's the flow across the different days. There are certain days, the cadence on Monday is very different from Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. So if you are really, Monday, there's no cost to come to the exhibit floor. So there will be a lot of the community there on Monday that come because there is no cost. However, the exhibits are only open 3 to 6 p.m. Tuesday, there are opening ceremonies in the morning. The exhibits open a little later in the morning. They're like around 10, open till around 6. Noon maybe. Wednesdays all day. Thursday, they're open until 3. When you think about the days to maximize your time on the exhibit floor, that's likely going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, part of Thursday. However, finding time for other folks to meet with you, if they're on the exhibit floor, think about when are they going to be the busiest and probably less likely to meet? Well, that's probably those same times. So, but I don't know. What do you think?
So exhibitor to exhibitor, when they shut the facility down at the end of the day, they pretty much kick you out. Before the show floor opens is an excellent time to do exhibitor to exhibitor meetings, because if you have an exhibitor badge, you can get onto the floor before the floor officially opens.
Right.
And they're open at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So you can schedule.
Hanging out.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't show up at that time unless they have a meeting, because they don't need to be there hours early.
Right.
The other tip I would say is Thursday is the day that we have a lot of students come in on student tours.
Right.
And a lot of the business has already been finished before that. However, to your point, that is when there's not a lot of stuff scheduled generally in the booths. So it's a good time to schedule something. And I have to tell, I don't want to take anybody's time here, but I do have to tell this story. Okay.
Please, yeah.
Because the number one tip for your first time exhibitors, small business exhibitors, is stay open until they turn the lights off. So here's my story. A few years ago, it's an hour before close on Thursday. Everybody in my vicinity is breaking their booth down.
Yeah.
The client says, should we break down? No, we should stay open till the end. Look down the aisle, who's coming my way? Brigadier General Cole, the PEO of PEO Stride, with an assistant.
Yeah, nice.
Looking around at everybody closing their stuff down. I went out, introduced myself, got him into the booth. He spent 20 minutes in my booth, fully evaluated the product, told us who we should be reaching out to within Army outside of Orlando, and basically gave us a blueprint for success, which he would not have done if we were trying to cheat and get out of there and be ready to go as soon as the clock.
Yeah, that's great.
Top of the
Great
hour.
tip. So I love
Stay open.
I love that, because that's so true. I usually get there, hit the exhibit floor around 8 in the morning just to make sure everything's set up for everything. And it's a great time to just chat with folks that are already there doing the same thing in their booth, or it's quiet. They're there trying to get some work done before the chaos starts, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Or afterwards to stay a little bit. And okay.
Yeah, definitely pay attention to the times that the exhibit floor is open. I've had plenty of smalls that show up. They're not exhibitors and they want to go network. They show up at 8 or 9 o'clock, and the exhibit floor doesn't open until noon or sometimes 2, depending on what's on the schedule. So definitely pay attention to the schedule, because it's not the same time every day.
Right.
Yeah.
There may be some of you on with us today who are part of teams that are presenting papers or tutorials. And it's we had one question that alluded to that. And how do you get people to your paper and your tutorial? Because there's a whole lot of stuff going on, right? And I know I go to various sessions, and most papers are really well attended, but some definitely more than others. This is where you can make use of the ITSEC social media yourself. If you want to post stuff, blah, blah, and tag ITSEC 2023, tag ITSA, tag people that you really would like them to be there, maybe. I will say TechGrove, NCS, we don't push necessarily specific papers or tutorials at the event. Government certainly doesn't, because there's just so many. But if you are on a team, have everybody on your team be using that social media to get some visibility for what you're presenting. Yeah. A couple other questions that were let's see, in the Q&A, I want to be sure to work on this. We're working on specific problems, Joint Base San Antonio. Hey, Cody, always good to have you around. Good contacts at certain divisions, Army and Air Force bases. Who would be the best person at ITSEC to talk to? Well, there will be several Army exhibits on the floor.
And Air Force.
And Air Force on the floor. AFRL will be there. AFMS will be there. Seems to me, maybe it's just me, but it seems like there's a bigger diversity of individual DoD booths this year. It's not
like
just one big quad with everybody.
26 is a
Right.
lot of
26
booths.
is a lot, which we don't usually see. We usually see this big cluster called the quad where Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps are, but they've dispersed across the floor. I mean, come to visit Tech Grove, you'll go right by PEO Stri, and you'll go right by AFRL. So
That's a trend I'm noticing, though.
Yeah.
I was at the DoD Corrosion Control Conference this summer in August, and half the booths were government agencies.
Yeah,
so I think the government is making a much stronger effort to go out and make themselves
As
available to
individual
industry, because they know
units.
that's where the innovation is
Yeah.
being led,
Yeah.
much more so than
Yeah.
the old days when the government led innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Army, I heard, has a whole village.
They do, yeah.
It's
STTC,
yeah.
STE, yeah, there's several.
So yeah, all in like the 3,200, 3,400 area of the floor, the whole Army
real
village.
close to Tech Grove. Yeah.
And then the NOC TSD is going to be represented at 2 different booths. So there's the NOC TSD proper booth in 1439. But we'll also have a presence at the quad booth. And in the quad, on our corner of the quad, there will be some cyber technology that's going to be available to discuss. And then also what I heard yesterday is we're going to have representatives from our program shops rotating through the Navy's quad booth throughout the day to meet with industry. They don't have a schedule out yet, but that's what I was told yesterday.
That's
so I was very, very encouraged to hear that.
Yeah.
So for the newcomers, can you tell them what the quad is? We all know, but they may not know what the quad is.
Yeah, so it is essentially a booth with one big booth divided into, as you might guess, four pieces. So Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps representation. Yeah.
And it's usually kind of to the left of the center, I would say, of them.
Right. And each of them has some of its technology programs on display. They have, they're very well attended in terms of the number of people there. Give yourself an hour just for those 4 booths. I mean, that's 15 minutes to talk to more program officers than you'll ever be able to meet in any other environment.
And usually, if somebody's interested in talking to, we talked about Damian Bailey, who's my counterpart for PEO Stri and ACC Orlando, the Army counterpart. He's usually stationed right there at the Army quad. So he or his boss, Randy Edney, they're there if you want to chat with them. That's where you'll find them most of the time.
Absolutely.
One of the other questions in the Q&A is, does the Grove, Tech Grove, ever solicit capability packages on behalf of AFMS, PEO Stri, etc.? And the answer is absolutely, 24/7. We love to know what you're doing, what you have to offer, so we can capture that in our database. And we use that as well as other sources when we're going out doing a tech scan for one of our government customers, or sourcing companies to invite to exhibit at one of our Innovation Harvest Days, for example, which is a very curated event, or looking for experts, whatever it might be. And we make it pretty simple. I'm going to put in the chat the link on our website. This is where you can share your capabilities with us. There's a form for you to fill out there, so you can tag yourself, so we can search for you by specific capabilities and to areas of technology and industry. You can upload capability statements, files, links to videos, whatever you want to put in there, so that we have that information. So Leslie has access to that information. In fact, all of our government customers at Tech Grove have access to that database that we're building in addition to other resources.
But just to be clear, you're not doing it on behalf of a government agency. You're doing it on behalf of the Tech Grove and making the data available to government agencies
Right.
that ask for it.
Yes, yes.
So
It's not
my old contract specialist hat on.
Although, we are funded by all these DoD entities, so in a way, everything we do is on behalf of them. Is that true? I also I appreciate, and I think I know who asked this, but the question was, am I going to be attending the conference? I think you figured that out. Yes, absolutely. And will I be coming by to see the booths of various companies that I've had the opportunity to get involved at ITSEC? Absolutely, that's true. And for those of you on the call, I'll tell you what that means. My other role at the University of Central Florida is I am director of our UCF Business Incubation Program, which Dan alluded to. In fact, we're sitting in my office in the incubator. This is not Tech Grove. And we have this incredible partnership with NTSA that each year we have a section of booths that we are able to help facilitate first-time attendees getting on the exhibit floor for a little bit of a reduction in the cost. So there's a whole section of companies that are new. They're really non-traditionals. They're not doing much or anything in the defense industry already, and they get to come and experience the ITSEC show floor, as well as there's another whole first-time attendee exhibit area. So I encourage all of you to really go visit those companies that are in those areas of first-time attendees, innovation showcases, those others where you're going to find the smaller organizations that you may not even know about.
Are there any panelists who've taken advantage of that NTSA discounted program?
There just might be, sir. How are you reading my mind?
Yes, I did take the opportunity to get one of those discounted booths a few years ago. Yeah. It was a very rewarding experience, being able to get in there without the not heavy. I mean, it's a fair price.
It's a cost.
It's a fair price. Don't get me wrong, but certainly as a small business, it was definitely easier. Everything was packaged. It was that. I think I had to pay for electric separate was the only other thing. Yeah. Had a pretty good booth location right by the lunchroom. Yeah. In my case, I had two of my clients in the booth with me, and one of those leads, actually, we just got an order 2 months ago.
Nice.
From a lead that was created at the show.
Look at that.
Right.
So that falls within the traditional 24 to 36 month time frame for classic government BD. All right in there.
Yeah.
But it was instrumental having that capability to inexpensively showcase two of my clients' products.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In our remaining few minutes, my friends, let's talk about follow-up.
Yes.
ITSEC happens, everybody's exhausted, the entire federal government sector uses up their PTO, they're not around, industry's closing out. It's like, how in the world do you effectively follow up with people who, by the time January comes, they may not even remember they had that conversation?
Oh my gosh, yes.
So how do you take good notes at ITSEC to be able to, in your follow-up, remind them, trigger? So my tip on that is I actually have a little form that I helped create for some of our incubator clients years ago that just have a little bitty clipboard, and as they're talking to folks, get a business card when they can, and there's just certain fields on this little form, you can create whatever form you want, that they fill out. Either while they're talking or right after they've had a conversation with somebody. Attach the business card to it so they not only know who they talked to, but what they talked about.
Oh, yes.
And maybe what that other person asked them to follow up with them about. So when you write that email, it's very personal. It triggers those memories of those conversations. And I always encourage folks to follow up right after ITSEC, but then send another follow-up after the beginning of the year.
Yes.
That's what
absolutely what you said. So taking notes is really important, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a company follow up with me after ITSEC, and they're like, hey, we met at ITSEC. Just wanted to get on your schedule for a follow-up. And I'm like, well, first of all, I met probably 100 people or more. So I don't have a photographic memory, unfortunately. So having to go back and go, okay, well, what did we talk about? I need memory joggers. So if you come back to me and say, hey, I want to follow up, this is what we discussed. This is what you asked me to look into. This is what I found. Give me some points of what our discussion was, so I have a jumping point for when we actually do reconnect and have that follow-on meeting. And to your point, reaching out immediately following ITSEC is good, so it's fresh in everyone's mind. But if there are lots of government points of contact in your follow-up list, be mindful. Many of them are taking much deserved leave.
Yeah, using up that PTO,
time off,
right?
especially around the holidays. So following up again in January is really helpful, because oftentimes, we're coming back to an inbox that is overflowing. So be persistent and let us know what those notes are. Right. That's super helpful.
And certainly that's true with government, industry to industry as well. So the first thing is, you should have your follow-up already done before you leave the booth. You should try to get on somebody's calendar. Do not say, hey, I'm going to call you next week and try to find a time. While you're in the booth talking to the person, if they're willing, put that on your calendar right then and there. They can always bring in other people, their engineer, whatever. But while you're there, get that done. Number 2, it's always great to hand out your card. My card actually has room for notes on the back, so that before you hand it to them, you can say, we talked about program X and we do Y. Hand them the card. But more importantly than that, you have to get their card.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you.
But I know on the government side, they don't have tons of cards.
I have cards, and you're welcome to take them. If somebody hands me a card with notes on it, it's going to go with the other 3,000 cards that I have. It's going to get lost. You're going to have to take those notes and put them on an email. I'm just being honest. Sure. I can't keep up with all the cards.
There you go. 2 different perspectives. So not everybody's a Leslie that's so popular and going to have 3,000 cards. All right, well, we are coming down to the end here, so just a couple more things. I do want to just touch on something we were talking about before we even went live on this webinar. Mm-hmm. If you're registered for the conference, if you're exhibiting in particular, you are probably being bombarded with emails offering to sell you the attendee list. Do not fall for that. Nobody other than the National Training and Simulation Association has access to the list of who is attending ITSEC, and they do not provide that information for anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't even get the information about who's on this webinar unless you opt in and say they can give us your email address. So please don't spend money on those lists, because you will be disappointed, and that won't happen. The last thing that I'd like to ask, in addition to reminding you to visit the Tech Grove booth at 3665, is in the back right corner of the exhibit floor. Every year there is a fairly significant footprint of space that's called the ecosystem of learning. That is a very important footprint on the exhibit floor. We have tremendous support from NTSA. I help manage a lot of that and the exhibitors that are on there. And that is all about STEM education, workforce pipeline, exposing that younger generation, whether they're elementary, middle, high school, collegiate level, to the defense industry, to simulation and training. And who you will find in that ecosystem of learning space are organizations that have a national footprint. So no matter where you're located in the country, when you go back home, you know about FIRST Robotics, or you know about the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, or you know about DoD Starbase, or you know about what Navy and Air Force are doing in STEM from across the country. You'll see some other cool things going on there. We have some presentations that will go on by all those organizations throughout the show. I really encourage you to just take a little bit of time and come by and visit and find out about how you as an individual or as an organization can get involved in filling that workforce pipeline of really talented individuals. That's my final word. Leslie, final word.
Oh, just an easy one. So I've already encouraged everybody to download the app. Don't wait till you're on the ITSEC floor to download the app. The Wi-Fi can be a little challenging with all the different users, so make sure you have it downloaded ahead of time, and that'll help you plan your event anyway.
Perfect. Yeah, you can star those exhibits that you want to go visit. So you got your personal list.
Yes.
And bringing us home, Mr. Ketchum.
Plan ahead. We've said it over and over again.
Yeah.
Plan ahead.
Which means starting
now.
With that, thank you so much for joining us, Leslie. Dan, thanks for hanging with me today.
Awesome.
Final webinar. Watch for the announcements in 2024 when we kick off our 24 series of Tech Growth Connect webinars, in which we will once again be shining a spotlight on those teams and incredible innovation embodied in those best papers and best tutorials from this year's ITSEC. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you all on the ITSEC floor.